Chapter 51. Can't imagine you are listening at novelfull.audio. In a Victorian-style gazebo, Davi and Mr. Kazuki sat facing each other and looking serious as if the most awaited interview of the century is about to begin. So, what's your question? The elegant-looking old man began as he smiled softly, breaking the quiet atmosphere. Davi immediately awakened from her moment of deep thinking and she straightened her back and looked at the old man intently. Looking as though she was a treasure hunter and the hunt was about to begin. How was Say when he was young? She asked. Her voice was soft, filled with curiosity and sincerity. Her eyes suddenly shone intensely and the feeling she's emitting almost felt out of this world. The way she asked him at that moment was indescribably strange that even an old man like him felt a faint feeling of something like a comfortable danger. Her eyes, her voice, and her words were like a magic potion that was powerful enough to might even make the most secretive person answer whatever she'll going to ask. At that moment, the old man smiled secretly within him as if he just discovered a hidden treasure. A treasure so beautifully breathtaking and at the same time, comfortably dangerous. And the most interesting thing was that, she doesn't seem to have any awareness about her natural prowess at all. She was just being curious and sincere, not knowing she's doing even greater than that. The old man then smiled at her as he speaks. How young? Around 10 and younger. Looking pleased with the girl's question, the old man nodded happily as if he was excited to tell a certain bedtime story to his little grandchild. The young master that age was. Will you believe me if I'll tell you he's quite really adorable, especially when he was 5 and younger? Really? Does he laugh and talk a lot? Davi's eyes were sparkling as if she was a child getting really excited about what will happen next to her favorite character in a certain fairy tale her grandfather was telling her. Not a lot, but yes, he does around those age. He's quite a bright kid too. He's really clever and really sweet. Sweet. Upon hearing that Say was sweet, Davi reflexively tried imagining him being sweet and her smile slowly faded. She imagined a frozen statue with a cold black mask being sweet and all, and it left her pretty speechless. She even tried visualizing the masked man feeding her with chocolate as he says words like, say while smiling sweetly, and her brain burst as she choked with her own saliva. Davi coughed slightly as the old man patted her back, laughing mischievously at her as if he completely understands why she's reacting like that. Davi didn't know it would felt so damn strange, as if the man in her brain wasn't Say at all, it's a completely different person. All she could imagine was him being adorable as she pets his head while he was sitting motionless and expressionless like a soft ice statue. So you can't imagine the young master being sweet, huh? I understand. Did you know that he even kisses me in my cheeks and hugs my thigh when he cries back then? Davi's brain started to spin as the old butler continued. And she could only felt that part of his story telling was to tease her, and the mischievous old man's plan was more than a success. Davi started imagining Say kissing her cheek and telling her words, sweetheart, let's cuddle, as he hugs her legs while kneeling in front of her, and it made her completely thrown off and she shook her head violently like a broken robot. No. Stop it, Gramps. It's impossible for Say to act like that. Amused with her priceless reaction, the old man could only laugh wholeheartedly. What are you even thinking anyway, young miss? Please don't forget that I am talking about the little, 5-year-old young master. Mr. Kazuki's tone was mischievous, and as soon as Davi heard his words, she face-palmed and laughed at herself as well. What the hell am I imagining in the first place? It was indeed felt impossible for Davi to even imagine the current Say suddenly being all sweet and cuddly. However, when the adult Say shrunk into an irresistibly adorable 5-year-old boy in her mind, Davi started fantasizing. She would really love to shower little Say with hugs and kisses even if he is just as cold and emotionless as the current him. Chapter 52. Dangerous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, next question, Gramps. The energetic Davi stared intently at the old man again, as if she's already switched gears and now ready for a much higher level of the treasure hunting. She sure switched gears quite fast, this child. Does Say have something he likes when he was young? She asked with a look of innocence and great interest in her eyes, making the old man smile pleasantly again. Her questions were all about the simplest but the most beautiful things that the old man couldn't help but feel the urge of wanting to just tell her everything. Even when he's that young, the young master wasn't picky. But he also doesn't have anything I would call his favorite thing. The old man paused when he saw her expression dulled as soon as she heard him, and he laughed briefly. However, he continued, and the saddened girl instantly brightened. There was one thing I believe he does really like. Davi's spine immediately straightened as he moved closer to the old man. What is it? Please tell me, dearest grandpa. Oh ho, this child's pleading skill is also quite unbelievable, huh? Mr. Kazuki was even getting more amused with the things he slowly discovers about the girl in front of him. And seeing an adorable child pleads to him sweetly like that with her eyes burning passionately left him feeling like the happiest old man at that very moment. Well, it's been more than a decade since someone ever pleaded adorably like that to the poor old man, making him felt extremely happy. It's a piano, he finally said, and Davi blinked 3 times. Really, she uttered, quite surprised. Back then, the sound of a piano will always calm him down no matter how agitated he was, and it was his lullaby. He will hardly fall asleep without listening to it. At that moment, the old man's voice saddened even though he was smiling, as if he's telling a warm nostalgic story of an old forgotten past. A faint feeling of pain and sorrow came along with it, and Davi instantly felt it as well, strangely making her suddenly felt a sudden urge to cry. Is it surprising? The old man asked, and Davi nodded right away, as she smiled. I didn't know he likes listening to a piano, she replied, and for some reason, a sharp little needle seemed to poke her heart and it bleeds a little. Does Say play the piano that time? She continued. No, he never learned it. It's not like he couldn't, he just didn't want to. He said, he only liked listening to it. Then who played the piano for him? His mother. Davi sighed in relief, not noticing the deep sorrow that flashed across the old man's eyes at that brief moment. Why are you sighing? He asked. I'm relieved, because I thought he doesn't have a family. But now I'm glad he actually has. I'm really glad. She sounds genuinely relieved as she smiles. Why? Do I need a reason why? It was sad being alone. So I'm really happy knowing that he's not alone. Davi smiled brightly. However, the old man didn't smile. A faint feeling of coldness almost akin to Say's, flickered in his eyes instead, causing Davi's smile to fade slowly. Well, he does have people he called family in blood, but it's quite too far from the kind of family you're talking about. Davi was speechless. The warm old man suddenly went cold, and it immediately stunned her. However, at that brief moment of coldness, someone suddenly talked. Young miss, the meal is ready. Abruptly, Eugene interrupted. Davi instantly turned at him. Oh, okay. She uttered and turned back to the old man. But to her surprise, the cold atmosphere instantly vanished, as if nothing strange happened at all. The old man immediately returned back into his usual soft and cheerful self. Oh, no wonder I'm turning cold. My poor stomach is going berserk. The old man jokingly said as he laughs. And his words were followed by a weak roar inside the old man's stomach, cracking them up together. Davi also understood the situation right away and was feeling sorry for the old butler. Ah. Sorry Gramps, sorry, she said apologetically as she held his hand to help him stand. Why are you apologizing? Please stop apologizing, young miss. But I'm not apologizing to you, Gramps, I am apologizing to your poor stomach. Davi's words were followed by laughter this time as the two started walking towards the mansion. Meanwhile, inside the old butler in disguise's mind, he was sighing in relief. That was close. This child really is dangerous. Dangerous. Good job interrupting, young man. Chapter 53 Gossips Made. You are listening at novelfull.audio. By the time Saturday morning rolled out, Davy and Eugene left the gray mansion. She told the old butler, she'll going to spend the night in her little brother's place. Thus, as soon as Davy left, the old butler in disguise left the house as well. On their way back to Blue Shark Port, Mr. Yujiro changed back into his normal appearance. Anyway, Yuki, how was it? Did you manage to pierce through Sei's barrier and got any information about her? The old man sounded serious and firm. The complete opposite of the warm and cheerful old butler in disguise. Don't scare me, please, sire. You know how tough your own grandson is. This is your fault, you know. He doesn't even trust us anymore. And everything about the young miss was already secured by him. I can't even find even a speck of dust about her anymore. Yuki, his most trusted underling who was 5 years older than Sei, was looking troubled. That little. Why does he need to hide her information? Now that's the question, sire. Though I'm not sure who's responsible for this, if it's actually young master himself who took down the young miss's information, or it's that guy, Zaki. Yuki's tone turned a bit sour as he mentioned Zaki's name, while the old man just sighed in disappointment as he heard his report. The old man was aware that if it's Sei who took it down, then looking for anything about her is now just chasing after the wind. That little punk as well. He's as tough as Sei. Even I can't get anything out of his mouth. The old man didn't stop sighing, making Yuki to smile mischievously. Haha, that's why I think let's just give up for this one, he said, looking as though he finally escaped an overbearing task. However, the next thing he heard from his boss instantly made his jaw drop. No, you continue investigating her. If computers and intelligence are useless, then go back to the Dark Age and find something using the old style. Even gossips may do. Yuki let go a deep sigh and could only say, ah, how stubborn, deep within him. He could only agree with what his master wishes. He noticed that the old man changed a little since his stay in the gray mansion, and it made him felt really relieved. Yuki was sure that it was all because of the young master's wife. Yuki has been guarding Mr. Yujiro for almost a decade. He stayed in the palace since he was young, so he had watched the master when he was still king. He could say that after more than a decade since he stepped down being a monarch, the only thing left in him as royalty was his majestic aura. His manners and protocols he practiced as a royalty was long gone. He was now just a normal billionaire who is longing for a great-grandchild. It was a long, tiring day for Davy. Ms. Lee called her and the two went to the National Library, then they spent the rest of the day shopping tirelessly. After the teacher left, Davy and Eugene went straight to Skytown. Upon entering the house, as usual, Davy squeezed his little brother with hugs, surprising the young man behind them a little. Sis, who's he? Haru asked curiously as he stared at the boy her sister brought. Haru, this is Eugene, he's my husband's little brother. And Eugene, this is Haru, my younger brother. Davy normally introduced Eugene as Sei's little brother, but Eugene was obviously taken aback by her introduction. Well, Eugene will never dare calling his master Sei, of all people, his older brother. That night, the three of them had a good time. Especially Haru, who was excited meeting a new friend. The two boys spent their time playing video games until they passed out. Chapter 54 Devastated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Another week went by and Davy haven't even heard anything about Sei. She was busy with her review, but she's starting to miss him really bad. She could only whisper the words, "When will you come back?" to herself. The house was silent. As if the temperature of it had gone lower than 0 degrees, and it's driving her crazy. For the first time since she set foot in the gray mansion, she felt an indescribable sadness. Mr. Kazuki, the cheerful butler, also said goodbye days ago, causing the gloomy clouds lingered persistently in every nook of the house. That morning, she again buried herself into piles of books. The exam is getting closer and studying was indeed a great distractor. Her complete immersion in her studying caused her to totally ignore the brewing gloomy atmosphere as she became one with the books she's reading. After 5 hours, she finally went out and walked towards the garden with her beloved note in her hand. She was thinking deep. Although she was busy with her review, she thought that the current flow of event wasn't good at all. She couldn't accept just sitting quietly without doing anything and obediently waiting for his return. She wants to do something. This can't be happening. I need to continue my mission even though he's not here, right? As soon as she processed her thoughts, she opened her note as she sat on the grasses. She studied every steps written as though she was Miss Detective trying to figure out a written cryptic message. Looking at her note, Davi was surprised knowing that for the entire month she spent with him, she only executed a mere 12 steps. Are you serious? Davi was a bit disappointed to herself as she pouts like a little kid. She bit her lip then tugged her own hair as she stared sharply at the note. Shortly after, as though she finally decoded the secret message, she shouted excitedly. The light in her eyes returned as if her imaginary motivation battery was charged again, 1001%. Eugene. Are you there, she said, and like an invisible ninja suddenly popping out of nowhere, Eugene appeared in front of her. Doviko, yes, young miss. The young man stood like a soldier in front of her and Davi stood close to him immediately. I want Say's cell phone number, she said, and the young man instantly froze. Sorry young miss, I don't have his number, he said, and Davi fell silent for a moment. Then she tugged her hair and sat like a weakened white kitten on the ground. Her sudden unexpected reaction immediately shocked the young man. No. You're lying. Even Mr. Go doesn't want to give it to me. Are you guys serious? Davi was devastated and looking as though she's about to cry. And before the young man could explain his reason, the girl stormed towards the mansion and locked every door, not letting anyone to enter. That moment, Eugene, the butler and the maids were all stunned. They couldn't talk for a long while. They looked like deadly lightning just struck them hard. They knew that the young miss never acted this way before. She's always been the kind of a lady who's serenely self-composed and never threw tantrums like this. This is the first time their lady boss gets upset, thus, making all of them extremely worried to the nook of their bones. Chapter 55 Beat him when he's back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At that moment, when the young man finally returned to his senses, he couldn't stand still. This is the first time he's been so agitated and scared at the same time. He wanted to sneak in the house to see what she's doing, but he was afraid he might make the situation worse. What should we do? What should we do? What if something happened to the young miss inside? My God. Please stop saying terrifying things like that. I don't want to die yet. Then, what should we do? Everyone were standing in front of the entrance as though they were broken robots, walking back and forth and almost losing their mind. The only one who stood motionless like a rooted tree was Eugene, who was currently at his deepest mode of meditation. As if he was quietly calculating a certain problem that might cost him his life if he fails to solve it. Meanwhile, Davi locked herself in her room. She looked serious as ever, scribbling something in her note, as if she was a military general planning a legendary siege of a certain impenetrable castle. Not noticing that it was already dark, she continued working diligently. And when she felt hungry, she finally stood to get some food. However, to her surprise, the butler, the maids, and her bodyguard, Eugene, were all standing like punished little kids just outside the closed door. They looked tired and helpless, as if they've been standing there for hours. Realizing the situation, Davi's mouth instantly hanged open and guilt flashed across her eyes. Truth was that, Davi locked the doors to show them she's upset, although she knew they can open it whenever they wanted. Well, she really was upset. She thought it was impossible for them not to have Say's number, especially Eugene. However, she soon realized that Say might had ordered them not to give it to her, upsetting her even more. But even though she's upset, she never meant to do this. She didn't think they'll act like this at all. She's aware they're just following orders. Why did they not open the door? Why did they stayed outside? Gosh, what have I done? She then hastily walked towards the door and opened it. At that moment, the maids and the butler broke into tears, shocking her even more. She froze as she looked at them. They looked really worried and her heart clenched. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this," she said, looking troubled, causing all of them to shook their heads. "No, no, young miss. It's our fault," they said, and Davi could only hug them and comforted them. "I'm fine, okay. I'm just a bit upset. Stop crying, it'll break my heart." Her words were like Angel's voice that calmed their hearts and their worries disappeared instantly. They were also overjoyed, for they didn't expect the miss to comfort them with hugs and sweet words. After that, everything was settled smoothly and joy overtook the maids and butler's face as they left. Except, of course, for the young man, who was looking tense ever since Davi opened the door. He looked like an extremely troubled soldier who just made a big mistake of sending a false alarm to his superior and that there's no way for him to undo it. Noticing his unusual expression, Davi faced towards him. "What's wrong?" she asked, and the young man looked heavenward for a moment, then looked at the ground, making Davi even more curious. I'm sorry, miss," he said softly, and Davi could only smile as he patted his shoulder as if she's telling her to calm down, leaving him a bit dumbfounded. "I said it's okay. Anyone can be upset every now and then, you know. And I'm no saint or something, okay?" Davi was trying to ease his obvious worry. "Don't worry, I'm not angry or anything with you. This is all Say's fault for being so mean. I'll beat him when he's back," she continued as she pouts. Her words somehow made the young man felt better instantly, in her, saying things like "she'll beat him," immediately cracked him up and he smiled. No one ever dared to say things like that to Say, his master, and was still living fine. There's no one other than her. Chapter 56. What should I do? You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's already past midnight when a black car quietly entered the gray mansion. Then a man with terrifying aura stepped out of it. As soon as Eugene saw him, cold sweats ran down his cute pale cheeks. Truth was that, when Davi didn't open the door for about an hour, he sent an emergency message to Say, even though he knows it's forbidden to contact him while he's still in that place. That was also the reason why he didn't give her his number. He sent a short message: "Miss is in trouble." That's why when the miss who was supposed to be in trouble opened the door 2 hours later, Eugene realized his doom is coming. He knows that his boss is already on his way, and it's too late to tell him it was a false alarm. "Where is she?" Say's terrifying voice was enough to make Eugene felt weakened. He's about to fall on his knees. The man was back to his usual self before he met the miss, stone cold and horrifying. He was enveloped with pitch-dark aura that almost felt like everything he touches might get suffocated to death. He definitely felt unrecognizable if one compares him to his self when he's beside the miss. "She's already asleep, boss," the young man finally answered. "What happened?" She was. Eugene is in a huge trouble. He could hardly speak. He knows, it's never a wise idea to anger him when he's like this. However, he couldn't think about anything else to tell him since lying was never an option. "Just say it." Eugene once again shuddered in fear. Say's cold voice never ceased to scare him, but this time, his intensity seemed skyrocketed. Thus making him, prepared himself for the worst and just speak. She said, she wanted to beat you." As soon as those words came out of his mouth, a quiet breeze seemed to pass by, as if the world went into a halt while an invisible 3 dots appeared above the head of the terrifying man. The vampire-looking man at the back also froze, and the same 3 dots appeared above his head. A deafening silence lasted for a while and Say was completely stunned. His pitch-dark aura started to froze as well. On the other hand, the young troubled man could only cry quietly without tears. "I'm sorry, miss. Forgive me. I know this man will never lay a finger on you, so I have no other choice." "Why?" That single word from Say immediately made the young man breathe in relief as if he just escaped death. The coldness in his voice and aura drastically dropped. Seeing this, Eugene decided to just talk, thinking he'll just kneel before the young miss and accept his punishment for betraying her when this great tribulation is over. She said, "Because you're so mean." Mean. Say went silent for a while and then he repeated what Eugene said as if he couldn't believe it at all. "Why? She was asking for your cell phone number and when I didn't give it to her, she stormed into the house and locked herself for 5 hours, not letting anyone of us to enter." Upon hearing Eugene's statement, Say was speechless. His dark aura was subsiding, as his confusion and curiosity started to rise. The miss said she's so upset. Eugene continued and Say suddenly looked like an ice statue with a crack. Say didn't know why he felt like a huge meteor just fell on him just by hearing the news that his wife was upset. Ha ha ha. This is indeed trouble, a terrifyingly huge trouble. Hear me, Say. She said you're mean and she wanted to beat you, meaning you're the reason why she's upset. Zaki's loud voice suddenly echoed in the silent dark night. His face looked serious, however, he's actually laughing evilly deep within. His inexplicably dark expression when he arrived a moment ago already vanished into thin air. On the other hand, the moment Say heard Zaki's words, he remained motionless like stone. He looks too surprised that he couldn't seem to comprehend what was he hearing anymore. At the same time, he was shocked by his own reaction. "What will you do now?" Zaki asked as he kept grinning deep within. Enjoying the amusing troubled look of this man who now looks completely different from his monstrous self, moments ago. Instead of answering, Say looked at Zaki and threw him his question back. "What should I do?" That moment, Zaki laughed out loud in his mind as he put his arm into Say's shoulder. "Easy. Just let her beat you and it's over." Ha ha ha. I would love to watch that. Wait, I should record it. Pfft, ha ha ha. Chapter 57 One hell of a kind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Easy. Just let her beat you and it's over. Hearing Zaki's advice, Say shrugged Zaki's hand off his shoulder. "I can't wake her up now. We still need to go back right away," he said, and Zaki could only tug his hair, showing his extreme disappointment. "Damn it. What a bad timing. Then just let her beat you when we're officially back, okay?" Zaki obviously sounds like he just wanted to see him being beaten by his wife, so he just replied him a cold, "Shut up," as he walked towards the entrance. Some moments later, the door of the bedroom was pushed open gently and silently. Footsteps then drew closer and Say sat at the side of the bed as the yellow light from the bedside lamp lit the room softly. Say stared at the sleeping girl with a book in her hand for a while before he slowly took the book away and put it on the table. For some unknown reason, looking at her peaceful angel-like feature, Say suddenly felt strangely comforted. As if she was an alluring oasis in the middle of a vast dry land. He watched her quietly like that for a long time until he reflexively started caressing her soft cheek gently as ever. Shortly after, Say was stunned finding himself touching her face. And he was about to pull back when Davi suddenly reached out her hand, causing Say to froze as if he was a thief caught red-handed. Davi immediately caught his hand with her eyes closed, then she hugged it as if his hand was some teddy bear. At that very moment, he remained thunderstricken while the girl just continued sleeping soundly without letting go of his hand. Say didn't move an inch after that. He can't wake her up and he needed to leave as soon as possible. However, he didn't know how to remove his hand without her waking up. Meanwhile, Zaki sent Say a message. They're running out of time and they needed to leave now. However, what Say replied to him made him look at it twice with widened eyes. Bring me teddy bear. Ha! Teddy bear. Why? Zaki's loud voice echoed in the quiet large sofa. But he soon somehow understood what was going on. Eugene, find a teddy bear, fast. Go to the maid's house, they might have one there. Eugene instantly disappeared, and after some moments, a small teddy deer was now on his hand. Zaki took it and he immediately ran upstairs. Upon opening the door of their room gently, his eyes bulged out when he saw Say in an awkward position as the girl was hugging his hand. He walked quietly beside Say, trying his very best to not make any noise. Zaki was aware that the moment they awakened her, they might not leave the house in time anymore. Thus, as if they were elite partners who were in a process of defusing a bomb, Say started pulling his hand from her grasp while Zaki was replacing it with a bear. However, midway along the process, Davi's brows knitted, causing the two guys to immediately halted and held their breaths. They stood still motionless, as if they instantly turned into perfect figures made of stone for a long while until the girl went back to her deep sleep again. The moment the girl fell deeply asleep again, Zaki signaled Say to continue removing his hand, and after a short while, they finally succeeded. However, just right after Say stood, Davi unexpectedly moved, and out of nowhere, Zaki suddenly pulled Say down, signaling him to immediately hide. With confused face, Say didn't have a choice but to follow the guy who's pulling him, thus the two ended up lying down on the floor, as though they were soldiers hiding from their enemies. Zaki was covering his mouth, looking like a child who was desperately trying to suppress his laughter, while Say was like a confused stone, looking as though he was wondering what the hell are they doing and what the hell is going on. A second after that, they heard her moan. Then the two went completely frozen when the light was turned off. Damn! She's awake. Thankfully, she seemed to be half awake when she turned the light off, and she returned to sleep right away. The moment they realize she's asleep, the two carefully walked out of the room like ninjas. And as soon as they reached the sofa, the two breathed so deep as if they just came from a place with no oxygen. The experience was one hell of a kind that the two of them doesn't know how to react. They've never been in a situation like this before. Holy sh*t. That was extreme. Zaki soon burst out as soon as they were out of the house that he even teared up and rolled on the ground. Say on the other hand just looked back at the house. He stood there quietly for a moment before walking back to the car. Chapter 58 The Perfect Strategy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Davi woke up suspicious the next morning. She was staring at the book on the table she was just holding last night. Then, her eyes fell towards the small white teddy bear on her bed. She was still half asleep, but by the time she remembered her dream last night, that Say was caressing her cheek as she fell asleep on his arms, she got up instantly and ran towards the door. Her hair was messy as she quickly walked down the stairs. She looked around but she saw no one. She then walked towards the kitchen and thankfully, Mr. Go was there preparing her meal. Mr. Go, did Say came home? She asked, surprising the butler slightly. He did arrive late at night, young miss. How did you know? He replied with a smile on his face. Davi's eyes immediately sparkled as soon as she heard he arrived. Where's he? She asked, sounding excited. Looking at her brightened spirit, the old man felt sorry as he speaks. He already left, young miss. Davi was silenced. She didn't know why, but this time she really felt so damn upset. She sat on the chair and landed her head on the table as if some powerful force just sucked all her energy. Why did he leave without even waking me up? That moment, realization finally dawned on her, that she's being like this because she's been missing him too much. She wanted to see him so bad. Please don't feel sad, young miss. The young master dropped by last night just to give you this. Davi immediately raised her head upon hearing the old man's words. Her mouth hanged open as she stared at the cell phone he's giving her. The young master said that if you wanted to contact him, you'll only use this phone. His number is already there. Davi was looking at it with her eyes filled with disbelief. Moments later, he accepted it and she quietly opened it. And when she saw a single phone number saved in it, Davi finally smiled and she hugged the old man briefly before walking away, leaving the old butler smiling happily for her. At the quiet gazebo, Davi was thinking deep. She realized that Say surely have some not-so-simple reasons for all of this and she felt bad for feeling upset towards him. However, she comforted herself right away, telling herself that feeling upset was normal. And it looks like the result of her showing how upset she was actually a good thing. She was happy to know that Say was actually looking out for her even though he's not beside her. Thinking about it, she was motivated to work even harder. She breathed deeply and her eyes started to burn passionately. However, as time goes by, Davi's eyes were getting narrowed as she stared at the phone on the table. She looks as though she was simulating a certain strategy before starting the war, but it looks like she's having some trouble. She was considering the fact that she can't possibly call him whenever she wants since she doesn't know where he is at the moment. What if he's busy or he's actually at the other side of the globe and it's already past midnight in the place where he is? Apart from that, Davi was also having a hard time choosing which step should she execute first. However, after minutes of thinking, an excited and meaningful smile finally carved in her face. She looks like she finally found the perfect strategy. Chapter 59 Under Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Somewhere in Australia. In a dimly lit spacious room surrounded with computers working on their own, Say was quietly staring at a large screen when his cell phone suddenly vibrated. Zaki, who was sitting right in front the door looking like a lazy security guard, immediately awakened. He knew that nobody will ever call Say's personal phone at this moment. Even his own grandfather couldn't. Therefore, he could only deduce that it's no other than the wife. He then instantly flew like wind as he quietly attempted eavesdropping behind Say. Say, on the other hand, watched his phone as it rung for a while before he finally answered it. Hello. As soon as Say heard Davi's sweet voice, he looked as though he just heard a certain mystic sound, and he seemed to suddenly forgot that he needs to talk back. Hello, Say. By the time she said her second hello, the man seemed awakened. However, the moment he heard her called his name, for unknown reason, no word came out of his mouth. Hello. Can you hear me? Hearing her third hello, Say seemed to return to his senses once again. However, before he could open his mouth to answer her, the girl's voice abruptly played again like a beautiful song. Is this my husband, Say? Her gentle voice calling him sweetly as my husband instantly stunned the man. He couldn't speak and he seemed looking absolutely dumbfounded. Well, part of it was because the girl never addressed him like that before. Say. The girl called his name for the third time, and Say finally opened his mouth, but before any sound could come out from it, Davi's voice rang out again. Thank you for letting me contact you. Upon hearing her, Say remained silent. He felt like he was a computer currently being attacked by superviruses one after another, not even giving him the chance to react. Although, the attack actually wasn't really that fast, it was him who was strangely reacting quite late. He was like a supercomputer suddenly lagging slow due to some powerful virus attack. A short silence went by and Say somehow managed to revive himself quickly. However, for the fourth time, before his voice came out of his mouth, the girl on the other side of the phone talked again, and this time the attack seemed quite lethal. I miss you, she said, and the call promptly ended. That moment, silence enveloped the entire room and Say remained dazed. The last attack seemed to be strong enough to shut down the computer by force. Zaki, who was eavesdropping the whole time, although he never heard a thing, waved his hand in front of Say's face, but the man remained motionless. My God, Say. What the hell happened? Wake up. The call already ended without you even saying a word back. Are you serious? Zaki's loud voice echoed in the whole room. And he looked as though he didn't know whether to laugh or what. He was so curious on what the girl had told him for him to be dumbfounded to that extent. Thankfully, the man seemed to finally awakened and he looked blankly at him. "She called my name 3 times, he said, and Zaki's forehead was quickly covered with deep lines for a moment, but he soon realized that it's actually a big thing since surprisingly, Davi never called him by name apart from that one time when she was kidnapped. And Zaki continued asking. "She called me, my husband, H.H. Zaki was even more confused. "So what? Was that a big deal? It's the first time I heard her address me that." "Oh. Okay. And she thanked me, and she said." Zaki was like a little kid waiting for the New Year's final countdown as he waits for the continuation of Say's words. "She said she missed me." A short silence followed Say's statement before Zaki could talk again. "That's all. That's all. I felt like I was suddenly under attack." "Pfft, ha ha ha. Seriously." Zaki rolled on the floor as he laughed with all his heart. He even smacked the floor as he laughs out loud like crazy while Say just quietly raised his head and stared at the dim light above him. At that moment, a certain warm disturbance was brewing inside Say's chest, and a mysterious and unfathomably invisible fire blazed across his eyes. Chapter 60 All.ou You are listening at novelfull.audio. Meanwhile, at Grey Mansion, Davi's face was blazing red the moment she ended the call. She did not know what to feel at that moment. Especially when the person at the other side of the phone did not talk at all. She couldn't help but wonder what was going on. Is there something wrong? Is he busy? Truth was that, since Davi was having a hard time choosing which among the steps she should execute first, she decided executing all of them at once. Besides, she thought that an all-out attack would surely have a stronger impact. In addition, part of it was because she thought that it has been so long since she last did a mission, thus, although she did consider the possibility of failure, she did not chicken out and proceeded anyway. Step number 07, use his name. She was aware of the importance of this step, and as Hinari said, in the art of seduction, this step belongs to the psychological tricks. However, for unknown reason, Davi realized she was strangely having a hard time using Say's name whenever she talks to him in person. Thus, she was glad to find out that it was actually easier for her to say his name on the phone. She thought she finally found a good way to practice addressing him his name. Step number 13, appreciate his efforts. Hinari advised her never to underestimate the power of saying thanks for every little thing. Davi has always been doing this step no matter who it is, however, strangely, she found it hard to express it toward Say. Making this step a bit challenging but ended up quite heartwarming for her. She was glad she finally said thanks, not just for letting her call him, but because of many other things he did for her since the beginning. This step also convinced her that Hinari was right, there are things that really seemed easier to say through phone after all. Step number 17, let him know you're thinking about him. Although Hinari said nothing much about this step, she did tell her it means as it is. Therefore, Davi made it sure that he will clearly get her message, that she has been thinking about him and she is missing him, although she did not realize that she somehow overdid this step a little. Step number 06, keep interaction short and sweet. As her love guru's advice, this step could be the application of the law of supply and demand. You have to keep the supply scarce so that the demand will grow even higher. Thus, Davi did it in a way as if she's some arresting breeze appearing out of nowhere that left him dazzled and speechless. Somehow, Davi executed the steps perfectly, although the steps were carried out in such an amazingly fast pace. And even though Davi was puzzled the whole time she called him and his lack of response left her wondering whether he was there listening or not, she somehow felt light-hearted. As if her gloomy world instantly brightened the moment she said it all. Davi couldn't explain why, but she somehow felt that something good had happened, and even though she received no reply, she still felt as though her all-out attack did work, giving her some sort of power to keep moving forward.